This nugget, focused on the project lifecycle, explains the relationship between project management, what we're going to do as project managers to ensure our project delivers on time, on budget to customer satisfaction, and actual project delivery, the detailed tasks that our team are going to undertake to produce the actual project results. No project is complete without both. We need project management to again ensure that the project is on time, on budget, to specification, and we need project delivery, the actual execution, the actual delivery of the project steps itself. In terms of order of magnitude, there will be far more effort placed into the project delivery component of our project. This is where the entire team works. Project management is the oversight that we, the project managers, and our project team leaders will do to ensure that the project is delivering on time. This relationship between the project management processes and the project processes is very important for you to understand. The project processes, the analysis, the design, the development, the implementation are the actual activities, the steps that your project team is going to undertake to ensure that the project delivers the expected results. These are the project processes. The PM processes are the enveloping processes that are going to ensure we understand what it takes to do the analysis, the design, the development, the implementation. The PM processes are going to ensure that we have the management infrastructure in place to ensure that the analysis, the design, the development, the implementation are in fact on time, on budget, and in fact delivering what it is we intended to deliver. So what are the PM processes? We have a PM process for initiating. Initiating is determining, is this project a valid project? Does this project make sense? Should we undertake this project? Once we do the initial validation, we will then go into the detailed project management planning process. In the planning process, we will go through and we will develop the detailed project plan, the work breakdown structure, the project schedule, the project budget that will define all of the steps that are required to do the analysis, the design, the development, and the implementation. So in other words, planning produces the plan that defines how analysis, design, development, and implementation will be done. So the first two steps of our PM process happen before the team even joins the project. The first two steps of our PM process are PM steps only and therefore happen prior to the actual execution of our project. Then we lead into actual execution. Executing the project. Executing the project is where the team, not the project management team, but the actual project delivery team will conduct the analysis, do the design, do the development, and do the implementation. So execution is the actual delivery of the project. This is where the majority of the work in your project is done. This is where the most hours, this is where the most expenses for your project are incurred during execution. Execution is primarily a project team member function in the project. The project management functions are focused on the monitoring and the control. The monitoring and control is where you, the project manager, and your project management team will ensure that we are in fact on time, that we are in fact on budget, that we are truly delivering what it is the project was initiated to deliver, that we are truly that we are truly delivering on the project that was defined in the planning process. And then finally, our last project management process is closing. Gaining final acceptance of our project, ensuring that the project successfully concludes. I've redrawn this slide to try to put the relationship between the PM processes and the project processes in better perspective. If you look at it from the total lifecycle view, the total lifecycle view begins with initiating, validating that the project makes sense, moving into planning, where you develop the detailed plan, the schedule, the budget for the project itself, and in the planning process, you identify the tasks required to complete analysis, design, development, and implementation. Then you lead into project delivery, where you lead into the project management process for executing, which is where the actual work for the project is done. And then finally into closing, where the project is completed, final acceptance is given by the business unit. Overriding all of that, monitoring and controlling all of that, is the PM process for monitoring control. So monitoring control begins when the project is actually initiated, so that we're ensuring the planning process itself is on track and delivering what is expected. As well, monitoring and control is active throughout the entire project delivery process, where each and every team member is responsible for contributing their piece of the information, their project status, their progress reports, into the monitoring and control process, so that the project management team can assess how well the project is doing, so that the project team can validate that the project is in fact on track and delivering to expectations. The PMBOK guide deliberately refers to the project management components, initiating, planning, executing, monitoring, and controlling, and closing, as process groups, not life cycle activities. Why? Because these process groups, initiating, planning, executing, monitoring, and controlling, and closing, can happen once per project or once per phase of a project. So if you're dealing with a very large, complex project, where each phase of your project life cycle, analysis, design, development, etc., are very large, many months long, it's quite likely that you will be doing an initiating phase for the analysis, initiating process for the analysis phase, a planning process for the analysis phase, separate executing, monitoring, and controlling for the analysis phase, and then you will restart the entire process for the design stage. So you will reinitiate the project at the beginning of the design. You will reassess the feasibility of the project based on the new information that you have at the end of analysis. How large, how complex is the project going to be? Is the cost-benefit statement for the project still intact? Does it make sense to proceed with the project knowing what we learned from analysis? Assuming the answer is yes, that the initiating phase still makes sense, you would go through and develop a detailed plan for the design stage. And then you would execute and monitor the design stage, and then finally close out the design stage saying, design is now done. It's time to move on to the next stage of the project, which would be development. And again, you would redo the initiation in development, validate based on the new information that you have, the new focus for the project. Does the project still make sense? And again, assuming it is yes, you will develop a detailed plan for development, execute, monitor, and control the development stage for your project, and then close. So it's very important that you not confuse the project management process groups, the project management process steps, the project management activities that you as a project manager must undertake to ensure your project is going to be successfully planned and managed with the actual project delivery life cycle. Because yes, for small, simple projects, you may only go through initiating, planning, executing, monitoring, and controlling once for the project, or for larger, more complex projects, it's very likely, virtually mandatory, that you will go through initiating, planning, executing, monitoring, controlling, and closing for each stage of the project. Separate set of project management process groups for analysis, a separate set of project management process groups for design and development and implementation, so on. In order to better understand how the 5 project management processes, initiating, planning, executing, monitoring, and controlling, and closing, work in an overall project environment, and whether that is by phase or for the overall project itself, it's important to look at the level of involvement. So if we look at it over time and over level of effort, and we look at initiating. Initiating is very much an intense but short, brief activity at the very beginning of the project where the initiation takes place. Up front, validating that the project makes sense, validating that there is reason and justification to produce the results of the project. Then we get into the planning stage, and the planning stage ramps up very quickly, reaches a peak early in the project, and then levels off, but continues throughout most of the project, and only will stop at near the tail end of the project. So this is planning. Why does planning happen across the entire project lifecycle? Why is there an intense period up front in the project? The intense period up front from the initiation to this point is where the preliminary initial project plan is developed. This is where the preliminary project scope statement is developed. This is where the preliminary work breakdown structure, risk management plan, human resource management plan, all of the initial planning for the project happens in this initial phase. So what happens to constitute planning for the duration of the project? That's the ongoing planning, or in some instances replanning, associated with actual project delivery. So at week 3, week 5, week 10 in project delivery, you recognize the project is off track, you're running late. It's the replanning activities associated with bringing the project back onto track. More appropriately, the ongoing planning activities in your project duration delivery is related to change management. As new changes are introduced to the project, as you need to add functionality, as you need to remove functionality, each change in your project needs a mini planning process. You need to review the scope of the change, you need to review the work breakdown structure implications, what new tasks need to be added to the plan, what impact is this change going to have to the project schedule, what impact is this change going to have to the project budget, what impact is this going to have to the overall project management plan. So planning, again, starts at the beginning of our project and then slowly peters off as the project delivers until almost the end of the project, because you can have changes throughout the delivery of your project. The magnitude and instance of changes will typically be less as you get farther and farther into the project, as you get closer and closer to implementation, but there still may be changes up until almost the very end of the project. Then we have the actual execution of the project itself. It starts off slowly and then ramps up and is absolutely the part of the project that has the most activity involved in it. So this is actual execution. This is the delivery of the project. This is the analysis, the design, the development, and the implementation components to your project. So it ramps up at or about the time when planning is starting to ramp down, continues for at whatever the appropriate level for your project is. I've drawn it at a more or less a consistent level, starting to fall off a little bit in the latter stages of the project, and then as you're nearing to implementation, typically the execution, the amount of effort involved with actually executing the project, will trail off until the project is completed. Throughout the entire process, we have the monitoring and control. So it happens throughout the entire project, and this is monitoring and control. This is the day in, day out activity that you, the project manager, and your team will do to ensure that the project is on time and on budget, and where appropriate, you will introduce new planning activities to ensure that the project changes, to ensure that the project delivers on time. And then finally, at the tail end of our project, we have another very brief, fast process involved with closing, bringing the project to a successful conclusion. Recognizing that any point in time in your project, if we pick this point in time in our project, you as a project manager will likely be doing some planning activities, new changes, adjusting the plan to deal with the actual details you have as part of project delivery. You will absolutely be doing monitoring and controlling, ensuring that your project is delivering on time, on budget, to business satisfaction, and your project team will be involved with execution. It's important that you appreciate, as a project manager, you will be doing multiple project management processes at any one point in time in the project. Throughout most of the duration of the project, you will be doing some planning, some executing and controlling, and your team will be doing the execution component to your project. Up front, you may in fact be doing 4 components to the project. During the tail ends of initiation, when you're answering the final questions associated with, does this project really make sense, you have probably already started doing some planning for the project. As soon as you start planning the project, you will be immediately in the execution, because that is you actually delivering project deliverables, i.e. the project plan, and therefore you must be in monitoring and control, ensuring that your plan to develop the plan, how's that for a good set of terms, that your plan for developing the plan is in fact on target, and that the project plan will be ready according to plan. Too many plans in there. This approach, wearing multiple hats, involved with planning, execution, controlling and monitoring and controlling throughout each and every day of the project delivery lifecycle, is critical that you understand this. You aren't simply doing monitoring and control, or you aren't simply monitoring your project team's execution. You as a project manager are involved in many components to the project management processes at each and every stage in the life cycle. It's also important to recognize that this cycle of initiating, planning, executing, monitoring and controlling and closing can happen multiple times throughout your project. As we said earlier in this nugget, for smaller, simpler projects, you may have a single wave of the project management processes where you initiate the entire project and then you plan the entire project, you monitor and control and execute the entire project and close it as one single project. For larger, more complex projects, you will initiate and plan the analysis phase, and then you will monitor, control, and execute the analysis phase, and then you will close the analysis phase. You will then go on and initiate the design phase, plan the the design phase, execute, monitor, and control the design phase, and then finally close the design phase. Now, typically it's not as purely cyclical as that. During the latter stages of analysis, maybe at about this point in the timeline, you would actually be going back and starting the initiation and saying, we are almost finished analysis. It's time to initiate design. Based on the information we now know, redo the cost-benefit analysis, revisit the business statement to validate that yes, this project still makes sense based on the new information we have about the project size, the project scope, and the project benefits. Is it worthwhile continuing to the next phase? Assuming the answer is still yes, you will then go on and do the detailed plan for the next phase, and then the team, by this point in time, you'll have gone through and done the closing for the preceding phase, and you're ready to actually bring the team in and begin the execution of the next phase for your project. So these project management process groups can be repeated throughout multiple phases of the project depending on how the overall project structure is defined. Having the project management processes iterated several times through the project, once for analysis, once for design, once for development, provides many additional values to the project and to project management. Primary to that is revalidation of the project. At the end of an analysis, as a result of going through initiation one more time, you revalidate the project. Does the cost-benefit statement for the project still hold? As a result of the new information that we have from analysis, is the project going to take longer? Is the project going to cost more? Is the project going to produce the same benefits the project was originally anticipated for? By revalidating the project, by addressing the appropriate kill points at the end of each phase of the project, allows the organization to ensure that ongoing investment in the right projects is done, and that the inappropriate projects, the projects that don't pass the revalidation process, are killed at the appropriate points. There is no shame, although a lot of people believe there is shame, of being a project manager for a project that gets killed after the first phase or the second phase. I would like to suggest just the opposite. There's actual pride in having a project that is killed after the first phase. As a result of you doing your job as a project manager, going through and revalidating the project, recasting the costs, reevaluating the benefits, reinsuring, revalidating that the organization should continue to invest in this project ensures that you're not pouring good money into a bad project. Revalidating of a project and killing projects where appropriate should not be considered of wasting the $20,000 or $50,000 or $75,000, whatever it was invested in the first phase of the project. It's not wasting that money, it's ensuring that you're not wasting the subsequent $75,000 or $100 or $250 or whatever the subsequent costs for the project would be. So you're revalidating the project and ensuring that your organization is investing in only the right projects and that only the right projects proceed past each of the kill points, each of the multiple iterations of project management. Assuming that you do pass the kill point, that the project still makes sense, it allows you to replan the project. It allows you to redevelop the work breakdown structure, re-identify the work components, re-identify the risk elements, replan the entire remaining phases for your project so that you are in fact delivering the right things based on the additional information that you have as a result of completing the previous phases for the project. So it allows you to refine and improve and ensure that your project delivery approaches absolutely matches the refined understanding that you now have of the business requirements for which the project was originally initiated. And of course, as a result of replanning, you can introduce improvements into your project. Whatever process improvements you identified through the previous phases, whatever process improvements your organization has identified as a result of ongoing project delivery can all be built into the next iteration of your project management process, the next iteration of initiating, planning, executing, monitoring and controlling, and closing of the project. This nugget focused on the project lifecycle, differentiating project management processes, which are initiating, planning, executing, monitoring and controlling, and closing, and the actual project delivery steps, the steps that the project team will be taking to deliver the project results, whether that's analysis, design, development, and implementation, as would be the case with an IT project, whether that is building a foundation, putting on floors, walls, roofs for the construction of a home. This nugget focused on the project management aspects, initiating, ensuring that the project makes sense, ensuring that the project has some form of validation, that the business managers in the company validate that this project makes sense, there is justification for this project to proceed. On through planning, where detailed project plans, complete work breakdown structures, project schedules, project budgets, risk management plans, quality management plans, etc. are developed to develop the strategy that will be used to actually deliver the project results. Into executing, where we actually do project delivery. Executing and project delivery could be considered to be one and the same. These are the actual steps undertaken by the project team to execute and deliver the project results, to deliver the expectations, to produce the products and results for the project. On through monitoring and control, which are the activities that we as the project management team participate in to ensure that the executing steps are acting, developing, being produced in accordance with the overall project plan. And monitoring and controlling includes the appropriate steps to review and revise the plan as appropriate to ensure that we continue to deliver the project on track, on budget, and on time. And finally, closing to ensure that the project is properly closed, that lessons learned are gathered, and that the organization benefits from the lessons and experiences and reusable material that can be used from your project onto other projects. There are many steps associated with initiating through closing. The detailed steps related to each of the project management activity groups involved with initiating, planning, executing, monitoring, controlling, and closing will be addressed through the nuggets contained within this series. This concludes our nugget on the project lifecycle. I hope this video has been informative for you, and thank you very much for